Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us in this Aramaic word study with the Syriac text. Again, this is coming a little bit later because I thought I would be having an easy time putting this lesson together, but as I dig deeper into it, I just became deeper and deeper consumed with the meanings behind the words, and I'd hoped to finish, this verse and go into the next verse, but every word just seemed to unpack more and more, and wanted me to go deeper into those. So I had to back up a little bit, kind of slow down and take it word by word. So I hope this won't be too um, you know, off track for you here, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And as you know, we are going through the book of Acts. We are in chapter uh, 1, and we're in verse 4. And I had intended to, finish this part here of let's where it says depart. They're being told by Jesus to go to Jerusalem and to wait for the promise that was coming. And so looking at these words, and was planning to do the rest of the verse, but the depth, when I got to the word promise, we're going to have a whole study on that next week, and I just couldn't you know, take time away from that to try to do that all in one step. So we're going to take a look at the two words prior to it, which is depart uh, and abide. And so just a beautiful study in these also. So let's take a look at this first one, which is nifrakun elah uh, Dan Kavun. You'll notice they have a little bit of a rhyme to them. Of course, that has to do with the third masculine plural ending of the un. And so just a little bit of a heads up there that when you hear that un at the end, it is the third masculine plural ending. But it does give a little bit of a rhyme to it. And of course, that triggers something. For some people it's just coincidence, but again, we're not here to as you know, do a scientific study or a scholarly study. We're doing this for personal enrichment. And so with that, it kind of at least gives us license, or helps us to feel that we can go and take some meaning out of this rhyming that occurs, that you see in the Aramaic language that you do not see in the English translation. So the Nefrikun Ela Dan Kavun just has a beautiful flow to it. And someday we're going to get to the Lord's Prayer, which in Aramaic has just a beautiful rhythm and rhyme to it. So I encourage you, if you want to do a little independent study, go on the web, look up in YouTube the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic, and it's just beautiful and gives us just a little bit of a nudge, if you will, as to what the original language could have sounded like as Jesus was teaching this. So when we look at nifrakun, it means depart. We see that it's a verb. We see that the G underneath it tells us that this is in the basic textbook form, equivalent to the cal, for those of you that have the Hebrew background. And so there's no, the important thing is that there's no intensity. There's no emphasis put on this of intensity. It's just the standard depart, of not to depart, which is kind of interesting. I think of Jesus sending the disciples to Jerusalem. You would think the depart would have been in the strong command form. Don't depart, don't leave. You're going to miss it if you're not there every second. But that emphasis wasn't on the depart. So we're going to just take a little bit of a look at that word. I've gone ahead and brought it up on the screen just to save time, but please be aware you can hover over the number that's above it, and there's a hot link that will take you to the Dukrana and give you the ability to unpack this word. And you'll see that it has the word, it has the vocalization. Again, we are not trying to become pronunciation perfectionists. I feel for me to pronounce it the way I do the Hebrew helps me just to retain it a little bit more and not have to add another level of complexity to the memorization. So we can always change that later and perfect our pronunciation later. But what's interesting here for me is we look down to the um, Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon. It talks about this word nephrikun. Um, Instead of to depart, it also can mean to redeem, to ransom, to dismantle. I thought that was kind of interesting. It also, again, we are in the general form. In its more emphatic form, it could mean to dismantle, solve a problem. But it's just, they want, what Jesus is saying here is stop what you're doing, go there, um, be in this mode of what we're going to see is the word abiding, dan kavun later on. So the emphasis is to just get there. But there's also some interesting words that are packed into this that can have the meaning of redeem or to ransom. Now, did they understand what was going to happen on the day of Pentecost? I don't think so at all. But we get little hints here that in this departing, that they're going on a mission. That there's a purpose for this going, and I just think it's neat that this word for to depart also can be somewhat linked to saving and rescuing, to deliver, to redeem, to ransom, because we know that that's what's going to happen on the day of Pentecost when they receive the infilling of the Holy Spirit. So I like that little bit of connection there. But the word I really want to take a look at is, well, let's just take a look at what the Jastrows has in it. And so, of course, the root word here we see is the pei, the resh, and then the kuf. And so looking at that root word in the Jastrows Aramaic, to me, that's kind of my go-to here because of the connection of the Aramaic. It just says that there's a period of maturity coming here. We know they waited and were in the upper room for these 10 days. So it's just, again, kind of a neat thing that this connection is here to remove, take off and go to these places. And then while you're there, there's a period of maturity, a time of waiting. And we're taking, of course, a little bit of liberty with the vowel pointings. We're just looking at the root, more of an etymological look at this, and somewhat ignoring the Masoretic or the vowel pointings that are here because they weren't in the original text. And so let's, again, this is not a scholarly study. Let's just see how this will speak to us in other ways. So having done that, we're going to go ahead and look at the word kavun. And so we hover over the top of this. It will open up the Dukrana. And this is what was, I thought, kind of interesting, is this word is a denominative, which means it has its basis in a noun. And so it's not exactly, it's used sort of as a verb here, has some verb indication, but it also is a noun. So that's just adds another level of unpacking to look at this. But what's more important to me is that this is in a pa-el, which is equivalent to the PL, not to confuse you too much, but signified by the D, which I like to just think of as a demonstrative. It's an action. There's a emphasis behind it that it's more than just a common textbook use of the word, that there's some intensity behind it, that he wanted them to abide there. And I think this word abide is beautiful. I've heard many sermons about it. Of course, abide can mean to remain, to persevere, to expect. I think that's another neat application here, that while they were in the upper room for the 10 days, they were part of this abiding was to be in a time or a thought of expectation, and the fact that it's in an intensive form also just adds more emphasis to this, that they were given an instruction by Jesus, and there's an anticipation being imparted here just in these simple words of Dan Kavun. When they heard these words, they knew they weren't just going to be, sitting in their lazy boy recliner, uh, sleeping on a mat and waiting for a knock at the door. That this was, they were to be in an active state and to be doing an occupation and remaining, persevering, I think is a beautiful tag along word, to persevere, to expect, to make, to remain. So it's not just a passive laying there. They were supposed to be engaged in an activity, which we know that they were in the upper room. Later on, it tells us that they were in one place and in one accord. We know that they were near the temple. So they were frequenting the temple. They were in time of encouragement and great expectation, that the fervor of expectation was building. And I can see that in this word, abide. Very, very interesting. So what's also interesting here is that we look at the root of this, which is the kuf, the vav, and the aleph, bringing us a root here. And so always want to look just a little bit deeper as to is there something that we can learn from this root. So we're going to click on this 1628, have it bring up this page for us. And what I thought very interesting is this talks about a woven object. And I thought that word really helped bring a deeper level of understanding to what it meant to abide. It was based upon a woven object of the threads being intertwined together. And so this time of abiding was meant to weave themselves together in a spiritual sense, and perhaps in a communal sense too, of with their brothers and sisters. We know there were at least 120 in the upper room. We don't know exactly who they all were, but there was a good number. And during this time, they were in a time of recovery from the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, a time of expectation. They obviously formed bonds there. And so this abiding, being linked together with the word of being woven together, I thought was just another beautiful beautiful indication. This is also in an imperfect form, which I think is kind of neat, because it also gives us the indication this was something that was supposed to continue during this time that they were on site there in the upper room. And so I just wanted to leave that with you. I thought it was kind of neat. Another thing I did somewhat by accident is as I'm going through here, I'm trying to come up with the root on my own. Of course, Dukrana gives you the root, but it's nice to try to learn the letters and try to unpack this. And so looking at the spelling of Dankavun, I see the Dalit in the beginning, which I can take to mean a preposition that means of or in. So we can look at this as a preposition and try to get some meaning from that also, that they were supposed to be of this abiding, which gives to me an indication of participating. And so then I looked at it and saw, oh, well, the root must be the noon, the kof, and the vav. And so I went and looked that up in somewhat ignorance, but I was a little surprised by what I saw with just this direction that I went in. So I'm going to show you just what I came up with. So we look up in Yastros, and we go to the noon, and now look for the kuf that's there, and we want this more in the beginning. And so we're going to look up the noon, kuf, and the vav, and see what we get here. And came up with. Pardon me while I'm searching. Here we go. So here we get the kuf, the noon, kuf, and vav, and we don't really find anything. And so what I was reminded of is that the vav and the yod can be used somewhat interchangeably. And here you see just a little bit of a designation here. That's what, sometimes you'll see a clue down here that you can look uh, at that combination of letters where the yod is taking the place of the vav, and they're used interchangeably. So we're going to go back and take a look at the um, kuf, and the noon, the kuf, and then what happens when you have the yod with it. And so see if that gives us a little bit of better understanding. Okay. And what came up was something very, very interesting. It brought out a purity, innocence, a cleanness. Um, and so again, that's not the root, but as stumbling across this, I thought, in this time of abiding, what are they doing up there during this time? They are searching their souls. They are repenting. They're trying to find the will of God. They're reading the scriptures. They're singing psalms. They're seeking after God in prayer. And this will bring about a cleanness, cleaning not only the appearance, but the inward, and bringing about just an innocence of obedience. And again, this is not the root, but it spoke to me. And so again, we're doing this for personal enrichment, and I just wanted to share that with you, that these two words, nifrakun, elah, dan kavun, just have so much depth in them and so much beauty to unpack as we prepare for next week's lesson, which is where we look at the word for promise. And we'll have the whole lesson on that word, because I just, the more I studied it, the deeper and deeper it went, and the more beautiful this word promise is. So thanks for joining this class. Remember, this purpose of this class is to just draw nearer to the Lord, to fall deeper in love with Him, to fulfill the Vahavta, which is the second part of the Shema, in our lives. And so I pray that it's a blessing with you. God bless you, and hope you have a wonderful week.